Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. We are back with another video. Today we are going to talk about the radius bone. The radius is a long bone in the forearm which partners with the ulna to form the elbow joint. Unlike the ulna which particularly articulates with the elbow joint, the radius articulates with both the elbow joint and the wrist joint, enabling a wider range of motion. For easy understanding, we will divide the bone into proximal end, the shaft, and the distal end. The proximal end of the radius connects to the elbow joint. We will find several key bony landmarks here. The first structure at the uppermost is a disc-shaped structure, which is the head of the radius. Radial head has a concave surface at the top for articulating with the capitulum of the humerus. The circumference of the radial head, which is relatively thick at its articular surface, articulates with the cup-shaped radial notch of the ulnar to form the proximal radio-ulnar joint. Now you can see here that the radial head is articulating with the capitulum of the humerus bone. The radial head also articulates with the radial notch of the ulnar to form the proximal radio-ulnar joint. Next we have is the neck of the radius. It is a constricted region between the radial head and the radial tuberosity. Now here is the radial head and here is the radial tuberosity. Below the neck is a prominent ridge known as the radial tuberosity, which provides attachment for the biceps brachii muscle. Now let me show you the attachment of biceps brachii to the radial tuberosity. Now you can see the attachment here clearly. Now we will go towards the shaft of the radius. The shaft is the long cylindrical portion of the radius. It has three borders and three surfaces. Now the first border is the anterior border of the radius. This is the anterior border. It starts just below the anterior aspect of the radial tuberosity. It ends at the anterior margin of the styloid process. Next we have is the posterior border. As you can see here, this is your posterior border. This border starts below the posterior aspect of the radial neck and ends at the posterior surface of the styloid process. The third border is the interosseous border. This one here is the interosseous border. This border starts just below the radial tuberosity and ends at the ulnar notch on the distal end. Now this is the ulnar notch. The interosseous border is the attachment site for the interosseous membrane. Let me show you how. Now this one that you can see here is the interosseous membrane. that connects both the radius and the ulna. Now coming towards the surfaces of the radius has three surfaces. The first one is the anterior surface, which is located between the anterior border and the interosseous border. Now next surface is the posterior surface, which is located between the posterior border and the interosseous border. Now this one is the posterior surface. The last surface is the lateral surface. It is located between the posterior border and the anterior border. This one is the lateral surface. The third zone is the distal end of the radius. The distal end of the radius widens and flattens to form the wrist joint. Now we will talk about the key structures present in the distal zone. Now the first structure is the radial styloid process. It is a prominent projection on the lateral surface of the distal radius. Let me show you the key attachments at the radial styloid. At the base of radial styloid is the attachment of the tendon of brachioradialis muscle. At the apex of the radial styloid is the attachment of radial collateral ligament of the wrist joint. Now next structure at the distal radius is the ulnar notch. It is a narrow smooth concave surface that articulates with the ulna bone to form the distal radio-ulnar joint. Now next structure at the posterior surface is a projection known as the dorsal tubercle or Lister's tubercle. There is a groove on the medial side of this tubercle from where the tendon of extensor pollicis longus pass. Let me show you how. Now this is the tendon of extensor pollicis longus which passes from the groove medial to the Lister's tubercle. Now the last structure is the articular surface for the carpal bones. Laterally it has articular surface for the scaphoid bone and medially it articulates with the lunate bone. The articular surfaces are divided by a slight anterior-posterior ridge. Now you can see the articulation of scaphoid and lunate with the radius bone. That was all about the radius bone. I hope the topic was clear. Thank you for joining me today.